Kevin, we're starting.
Hi, didn't see you there. I'm Kevin and that's Dan, and today we're going to talk about education. Dan, what do you think is the most important part about education?
Obviously grades and stuff, right?
Dan, you're an idiot. I mean, different. Difference is the most important part about education, and there's four main types: racial, cognitive, class, and linguistic. They all coexist together, so we'll try not to mesh them together. I also suck at segues.
Racial diversity affects power and learning for both teachers and students. As of now, white males are generally the ones on top in school districts and boards. This makes decisions by the board biased, as they're the only one to take account on one viewpoint.
It also creates exclusion. Lisa Delpit's In Other People's Children brings up how her black friend, who's a teacher, felt like her voice wasn't heard in the school board because they were all whites. This makes the environment toxic, and students don't feel welcome. Representation is also very important, and here's why. People use statistics or facts to show racial difference, but those expire. What doesn't expire? Skittles. Skittles are different colors like people, and each color is a different flavor, bringing something new to the table. Even though red Skittles and green Skittles are both Skittles, a red Skittle needs a support from another red Skittle, like a green should green.
So this is why we need different representations running the school instead of one race, right?
Dan, that's literally the only reason I'm talking about Skittles. Stop asking stupid questions. Just kidding, there are no stupid questions. People think differently, which is why teachers should take into account cognitive thinking. While race and upbringing is a prime way of showing difference, you shouldn't use it to simplify all races. Okay, me and Dan are both Indian, but we're not the same. Dan likes wearing kilts on the weekends, and I like long romantic walks on the beach. Dan's a good note taker, but I eat my books to absorb the knowledge.
If you want to find the differences with your students as a future or current behavior for teaching, a great way of doing this is an introduction activity. On the first day of class, give a kid a note card and let them fill out their name, hobbies, and how they learn best.
Our professor, Professor McCall, uses a course evaluation sheet to show how she could improve her teaching. Teachers should always be open-minded to new suggestions and improvements to help the students.
I remember you mentioned upbringing earlier, which connects heavily to the class difference. Class division is a serious problem in schools because the educational system is made with the middle and higher class in mind. Even though lower class children can go for an education, they do not have the same resources as other classes do to be involved.
This sets the difference between equality and equity. Equality in education is when everyone gets the same thing, but equity is when everyone can get on the same playing ground and have equal potential.
Class difference, like the others, connect to cultural difference, but one of the most prominent is linguistic difference. It's the same way if English isn't your first language in the US, you'll have difficult time fitting in, being heard, and understanding it.
Having staff that doesn't have diverse backgrounds really solidifies the struggle. Some schools do have ESL programs, but not all schools do, which could possibly explain how the low success rate of some minorities are. I wrote my name odd here. One, I thought it was very funny at the time, and two, people say I'm a special snowflake, so I kind of just embraced that. You see, it also could represent linguistic diversity. Let's say everyone speaks normal English, but then out of nowhere there's a race that speaks mirrored English. You're going to need some people who speak mirrored English to teach, or else there will not be an equal learning ground. Lisa Delpit's book also mentions that kids who learn another language usually have trouble learning English. They either code switch, which is switching from their primary language to their secondary language, or they'll just be really stressed out and eventually drop out.
The situation is exceptionally common with Hispanics who immigrated here. There are students who just struggle learning English right away and need that specific support. Currently, some schools are improving on it by making it mandatory for some teachers to learn another language.
Not gonna lie, I don't know how to end this script, so if we don't reach 5 to 10 minutes, we're probably just gonna make some skits to pad out the time. Otherwise, from Channel 420 News, I'm Dan.
I'm Kevin.
Have a good one. Alright, so this is just an aftermath, and I was just wondering, what do you think, out of all the difference we mentioned, is the most prominent, or you think the most important or underlooked? Yeah, just...
The most important one for having in schools is probably, it's hard to say, between racial and linguistic. Because being able to, for the racial one, it's being able to take from different cultures and learning about the different cultures. That way people are more educated rather than being ignorant. Because for us, being Indians, people just automatically assume that we're all part of the Hindu religion and that we all don't eat cows, and that's not entirely true.
Yeah, I go to Burger King every weekend. So yeah, I could kind of relate to that there, Dan.
Yeah. And then also with the fact that everyone thinks that we all have the same accent and that we all speak the same way, which is not true because we both don't have an accent unless like we really try.
I mean, you kind of do, but continue.
Okay. And then they also assume that we're all going to become doctors and lawyers and engineers and like all things in the higher like grade, the pay grade, I would say. But you and I, we're becoming teachers in the long run.
That I agree with. For me, I think the most important one is linguistic diversity. I think that's like, out of every difference that we brought up, I think it's the most underlooked. Because and it has the greatest consequences if you don't like acknowledge it. It makes cultures it makes like America more culturally divided because it's kind of forming only one culture, one area where only everyone speaks English. You're kind of like cutting off the students' culture that they gain from their family, like their beliefs and stuff. The book that we read, it also said that students feel like they either code switch, they either completely disregard English. Like, they learn the words, they could like translate back and forth, but the words don't have meaning, like how a primary language does. She also says that students get very overwhelmed, which is rough in the education system, because like learning itself, like just when you're a little kid and you're like learning words and numbers and stuff, it could be really like stressful, but like piled on top of that, they're translating and learning another language. It could be like really, really difficult. So that's why I think.
Yeah, and I also know from my personal experience when I was in English as a second language classes, my first language was English. They just kept me in the program. But for the other kids that were there, them learning to sound out certain words was very difficult for them. They were like stuttering and like they couldn't get the word completely out right. So it was a little intriguing to watch.
Yeah, I think that if schools want to help this out, they should either all get ESL programs or hire teachers that are bilingual or speak another language. Doesn't matter which one. But something that I don't like about ESL is it feels like traditional thinking. I mean, like, yeah, they find ways to like help them relate to it, but it kind of like supports code switching in a way that like we saw a video in education and it was like this teacher and she was using note cards to teach them, but it feels like you're using word association. Yeah, but you don't like use the words outside of like the context, you know?
And then also, I wouldn't say to just have just ESL classes for those children or people that have English already as their first language. Then they have like other other language associated classes like Spanish or French or German, like how some high schools have it, but then also start them out as a younger age and have them interact with each other. So like the kids that know Spanish and the kids that don't know Spanish, have them interact in the same class.
They do stuff like that in like immersion classes too, where they get teachers that speak a different language, and like the classrooms are usually designed to be like the culture of the language they're learning of, and they have the kids learn the language that way through context. But like sometimes they'll say a few words in English, but most of them will be in the second language. So like the students can like cognitively associate words rather than using note cards or vocab lists. And I used to live in New Jersey when I was younger. So something they did was they would teach us Spanish in kindergarten. We would have like this TV special. I don't know what it was called, but they would like teach us through like it was like a show. It was kind of like Sesame Street, and they would teach us. And like starting kids out at a younger age learning a secondary language, I think it would help out schools in like future generations.
Yeah, I agree with that also. Because my cousins are actually doing that. And my one cousin is almost fluent in French. Because he started out with the French. He started out learning French when he was very young. And he's still taking French now. And he always speaks to me in French. And I'm like, I don't know that language.
Oui, oui, baguette, am I right? Yeah. So I think we're just gonna call it Enzo there. So thank you guys for watching. Smash that like button, and if you want a sequel, let us know.